Hey everyone, welcome back to Prep with Sid, where we break down technical interview questions step by step and focus on the thinking behind the solution. Today, we are going to solve a very common analytics problem, month over month percentage change. Businesses don't just want to know how much revenue they generated. They also want to know whether revenue increased or decreased compared with the previous month. And although we are using revenue today, this same SQL pattern can be used for orders, active users, subscribers, expenses, website traffic, and many other business metrics. So here's our question. An e-commerce company wants to understand how its revenue is changing from month to month. Using the company's sales data, calculate the total revenue for each month and the month over month percentage change compared with the previous month. So first we need to calculate the total revenue generated in each month. Then we need to compare each month with the previous month and calculate the percentage change. Let's create our sample data and work through this step by step. Let's start by creating a sales table. Each row represents a sales transaction. We have a sale ID, associated order ID, the customer who placed the order, the sales date, the status of the sale, and finally the revenue amount. Let's run this query. Okay, we got our sales table. Now let's insert 6 months of sales data. Okay, that ran fine, so we have some data to work with. Let's inspect the raw data. Okay, before writing our solution, let's understand the data. Here, each row represents an individual sale. We have multiple transactions in January, then we have some transaction in February, March, April, and May and June. So we have 6 months of data to work with. There are mostly completed transactions. I did add cancel transaction. It's always a good idea to look at the data. Do not assume anything that all the records are valid. It's a good practice to understand the data here. So of course, in this case, because we have canceled transaction, we do not want to include in our result set. There is another important thing to recognize. Our source data is at the transaction level, but our question is asking us to compare months. So before we calculate month over month change, we first need to transform this data into one revenue number per month. Okay, so let's calculate the monthly revenue. So first I'm going to filter to only include completed sales. Then I'll extract the year and month from the sale date. And finally, I will sum the revenue and group by year and month. Let's run this query. So we can see for month 1 through 6, January to June, we have a monthly revenue. Now let's manually calculate 1 month before writing any more SQL. So we have February is $600, January we have $500. So it's 600 minus 500 divided by 500 times 100, which comes out to 20%. So the month over month formula is current month minus the previous month divided by the previous month multiplied by 100, which will give you 20% in this case for February. So to calculate month over month, we basically need previous month's value. For February, we need January's value. For March, we need February value, and so on. So the question becomes, how do we get a value from the previous row? This is where the lag window function comes in. Lag allows us to access a value from a previous row. We will order the rows chronologically by year and month. Then lag will return the monthly revenue from the row immediately before the current row. So let's start working on our final query. Here, I am going to put our monthly revenue calculation into a CTE called monthly revenue. Nothing has changed logically. I'm using the same query that I was showing earlier. I'm just wrapping it in a CTE variable called monthly revenue. This CTE simply gives us a clean data set with one row per month. Now we can apply lag to these monthly values. So let's take a look at it, how we are adding a lag. So here after the CTE, I'm selecting from the CTE and adding a lag. So lag, monthly revenue, over order by revenue year and revenue month. So let's run this query. Now look at February. You have 600, which is the current revenue, and lag gives us the January revenue, which is 500. For March, you have 500, and you get previous month, February's, which is 600, and so on. This is exactly what we needed. January returns null because there is no previous row before January, which is expected. Now let's understand why order by matters. One important point about lag does not automatically know what previous means. We defined a sequence using order by. Because we are comparing months, the rows need to be ordered chronologically. Now I will put the calculation into another CTE. So now our solution has two clear steps. Step 1 gives us monthly revenue, and step 2 gives us previous month's revenue. Now we are ready to calculate the percentage. So for percentage, math is simple because both values are sitting on the same row. So we'll do monthly revenue minus previous month revenue divided by previous month revenue times 100 as a percentage change. Let's run this query. Okay, now we can see for January, the result is going to be null as expected because there's no previous month. That's a starting month. For February, remember we did this calculation manually. We were getting 20%. And then for March, we have negative 16%, which means the revenue is decreasing. So the previous month we had 600, and the current month we have 500. The revenue decreased. So a positive percentage means revenue increased. A negative percentage means revenue decreased, and 0 means revenue did not change. There is one edge case we should fix before calling this complete. What if previous month's revenue is 0? Our formula would try to divide by 0, which will return an error, divide by 0 error. So let's protect against that. And let's round the decimal to 2 places. We don't want to see like all these zeros after the decimal. So to protect against 0, what we'll do is we'll use a function called nullIf. So we are saying that if previous month revenue is null, if the previous month revenue is 0, we convert it to null, and the result will be null in that case. It will not give you divide by 0 error. And to round this whole number, the whole percentage value you're getting, what we do is we do round, and we want 2 decimal places, so we wrap the whole result calculation in parentheses. Okay, let's try to run the query again. Here, so you can see we have now rounded to 2 decimal place, and if one of the values was 0 here for previous month, we will not get divide by 0 error. Now our solution may look complete, but this is where it shows how much attention you pay to the question. In the question, if you remember, the interviewer is asking to show revenue year and month as a year-month value. Even though it's not much different than what we already have, but it just shows that how much attention you are paying to the question. So it's always a good idea after you have written the query to go back and try to compare that whether you have answered the question they are asking. And to do that, I'm concatenating year with month using the dash and padding it with zeros to make it 2 digits. Okay, that is what this means. Now let's try to run this query. Okay, so we have year month exactly in the format that question was asking. Then it said we want to know monthly revenue. You remove this column, and that's when you can call it. It is 100% exactly what interviewer was asking. And this is our final answer. We have the monthly revenue, and the percentage change. Let's review what we did. Don't Try to memorize the final SQL. Remember how we got there. First, understand the business data and filter to the records that actually contribute to the metric. Second, aggregate the transaction to the period you are comparing. Third, use lag to bring the previous period's value onto the current row. And finally, calculate the percentage change. And revenue is only one example. The same pattern can be applied to orders, active orders, subscribers, expenses, profits, almost any metric that need to be compared over time. In this question, we did month over month. You can easily use the same pattern to calculate day over day, week over week, quarter over quarter, year over year. There's one more important interview edge case, and this is moving on to, I would say, like advanced level. The basically interviewer want to know like how deep are you thinking? What if company had no sales at all in February? So February would basically completely disappear from our monthly result. Then when lag processes March, the previous row would be January, right? If there's no February row at all, for March, the previous reference is going to be this, which is January, and that is actually not correct. If business requires true calendar month over month comparison and months can be missing, we should use a calendar or date dimension so that every month is represented before applying lag. That's the kind of edge case that's worth mentioning in an interview. Okay, let's recap. So we started with individual sales transactions. We excluded canceled sales because they should not contribute to revenue. Then we aggregated the data into monthly revenue. We used lag to bring the previous month's revenue onto the current row. And finally, we calculated month over month percentage change. That's the pattern I want you to remember. If you found this useful, subscribe to Prep with Sid. Here we break down SQL and data engineering interview questions step by step and focus on the thinking behind the solution, not just the final query. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.